Hello and a very warm welcome from me, Philippa Blackham. Welcome to our event today. Everything is going to be okay. A special event organised by the Lighthouse Retreat Centre, which is run by the Brahma Kumaris here in the UK. And a special welcome to you from wherever you are in the world, joining in our theme for today. Well, we're going to be asking in our session today one of life's biggest questions. What happens to us when we die? Now, this may be a question that you feel you have already given quite considerable thought to and come up with your own understanding of what happens based on your own ideas or maybe even your own philosophy. But today we're going to be hearing from one woman who had a profound experience when she almost died and left her body, but then came back to life, what we call a near-death experience. Now, it proved to be a moment beyond time, a moment beyond space, which lasted only a short while, but the impact of that has affected her whole life ever since. Now, the title of our event, Everything is Going to Be Okay, is because that was the profound insight that came from that experience of being beyond the body. Now, I'm aware that today is 9/11. In fact, it's the 20th anniversary since 9/11, a time when we remember all of those whose lives were affected by the events of that day. And in many ways, 9/11 sent a ripple of waves across the world, which touched the lives of each one of us. And so our hope today, 20 years later, is that maybe we can send another wave, another ripple across the world, which reaches out and touches the lives of others. But this time, bringing a wave of peace, a wave of love, and above all, a wave of hope. Now, we will be having some moments of reflection during the course of our time together today. So maybe we can each individually, in those quiet moments, dedicate our time of meditation and reflection to those who lost their lives 20 years ago. So, Dr. Ingrid Honkala was born in Bogota, high up in the Andes of Colombia. She's a former NASA research scientist and a marine biologist, and now the author of a book, A Brightly Guided Life, How a Scientist Learned to Hear Her Inner Wisdom. The book tells her account of how she nearly died in a tank of cold water at the back of her family home when she was only 2.5 years old. Her parents had both gone out to work, leaving Ingrid and her sisters in the care of a maid whose attentions were elsewhere. Away from adult supervision, Ingrid and her sister were throwing a ball across the tank, which the family kept for washing the family's clothes. Leaning forwards to pick the ball out of the water, Ingrid slipped and found herself plunging into the freezing cold water. As she felt herself falling deeper and deeper into the tank, she could hear her sister calling out to her. But then everything went quiet.
Thing I could hear was my chest, my heart pumping in my head really loud. And at that moment is when something amazing happened. I went from this state of absolute horror to a state of absolute and complete peace. It was a state of serenity. It was just nothing to fight for anymore. It was just peace. I also experienced the state of absolute silence. So it was what I call the silence behind the silence. Wow. And another remarkable thing that gave a lot of contrast was that this tank was very dark because it was made of cement. So when I fell into this tank, I remember the last thing I saw was darkness. But right there, when the sense of calmness happened, there was a light. And there was a light that happened, it came from below. Bing. And now this light was illuminating my entire watery surrounding. Just like, oh. So I started to just look around and I saw bubbles suspended in the water, and the bubbles were surrounded by light. And I started to chase these bubbles. And by chasing the bubbles was that I turned around and then I saw a body suspended in the water. And incredibly, at that moment, I knew that that was my body. I was born as a very sick child. I was ill all the time. I had respiratory problems. I was always sick. And now I was in a state of absolute well-being. So when I saw the body in the water, I thought, I'm not going back to that. Why would I want to be there? Where I am sick, where I am not free, where I feel trapped. So my first thought was like, I'm leaving. I can leave this body behind.
Now, Ingrid spent some time in her out-of-body experience, finding that whoever she thought about, she could be with in a real-time way. She first went to the maid, who was lying on her bed watching the television, but she wasn't able to get through to her. Next, she thought about her mother, and she found herself watching her mother as she approached the bus stop, about to take the bus on her journey to work. At that very moment, her mother fell to the ground and was filled with an absolute knowing that something had happened to her daughter. Immediately, she started to rush back to the family home. For Ingrid, though, her connection with this world was gradually beginning to fade, and she found herself entering a dimension of light.
There was not limitations of anything. You could actually feel and know everything happening with everybody. And in, again, just a flash, I appeared in a realm that was made of absolute, pure, bright light. And this is what makes this extremely hard to forget, and is that for the first time in these 3 years of my life, I felt that I was home. So it was the sense of like, oh, I'm finally home. Actually, this experience was more real than this reality. And I felt that I was being welcomed. At that moment is when the sense of self started to dissolve. And I started to become one with the whole. Beyond this, I experienced what I said to people is the sense of non-self, or the sense of nothingness. There's no sound, there's no color, there's no movement, there's no meaning, there's no description. At this point, there was not even thought. It's like all that was gone. You just complete a state of oneness. Because
So both those clips were extracts taken from a film called The Near-Death Experience of Ingrid Honkala. You can watch it yourself if you look it up. And we'll be playing more clips throughout our time together today. But I'm absolutely delighted to say that Ingrid is with us in person. She is very much in her physical body and joining us from her home in the US of A. Ingrid, a very warm welcome to you. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Felipe, and thank you so much, everyone.
Oh, for having me here. What an honor. What a blessing.
Well, I think the blessing is actually ours today, because the insights that you gained during that moment when you were only 2.5 years old is still rippling out and affecting your life today, and affecting the lives of so many countless others who are touching into that experience. And as you're telling your story, Ingrid, it seems as if the memory of what happened to you when you were 2.5 years old is as fresh today as it was at that time. Does it really feel as close to you as that?
Yes, yes. And the incredible thing is that it's not just the memory, but the feeling of it. It remained present. I think, like I was mentioning there in that video clip, it felt more real than anything I had experienced. And even through time, when I was little, after that experience, I would wake up from sleeping and I would say, this is the dream. And say, how I know that I'm not dreaming this? So I would feel my human or my physical reality more like the dream than that state that I experienced.
I mean, that's so interesting that you can have an out-of-body experience that feels more real than the experience that you're having whilst in this body. And one of the intriguing aspects about your story is the way in which you were able to think about someone, and then there they were in front of you. It was almost like you were with them in the physical form. How did that work?
It is like, Filippo, like time and space just was not present anymore. It's like everything was there in the now. So whoever I would think about, whatever I wanted to do was just in that state of presence. So that was something that was absolutely incredible. And it was just like you mentioned, going to see the maid, going to see my mom. I remember seeing a dog and feeling, oh, I'm there with the dog. So, and incredibly, it was anything also now that we're talking about that will evoke feelings of love and connection and wanting to belong to that experience. And I would just be there. So I think it's just that knowing that everything is here and now. We just have to have the intention and the desire and to be connected.
Well, we're touching on profound matters today, and to help us explore and understand these matters, I'm delighted to say that we're also joined by Sister Jayanti, who is the additional administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris, joining us from London in the UK. Sister Jayanti, a warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for being with us. What do you make of Ingrid's account of this time that she spent outside of her body?
My spiritual understanding and experience tells me that soul, the inner being, and the physical body are two distinct entities. And as a human being, we come together and both work together. And what Ingrid is describing is that state in which the soul is released from the body and is able to experience its original eternal state of truth and immortality. The soul does not die. And so it's beautiful that you've had confirmation of this from such an early age, Ingrid. And from that awareness comes this awareness that I have been blessed with this gift of this human chariot, this human vehicle, to be able to do the best that I can in terms of moving forward spiritually, growing, but also being able to share love and happiness and respect with all my human family. And so that detachment from the body is the requisite to be able to experience this huge connection with humanity, and also to know that there is an existence beyond this physical body. So thank you for sharing that so lucidly, Ingrid.
Now, for many people, this will be a new concept, that there is a continuity of consciousness that continues beyond the moment when we physically leave this body. that we somehow continue to think as ourselves and feel that we are ourselves, and even have a connection with those who we physically had a connection with. And yet we're not that person. And I know, Ingrid, for you, when you came back from this experience, because your mother rushed back, she knew exactly where to look for you, and there you were in the tank. She was trained in resuscitation, and she was able to bring you back into life. And I know that after you had that experience, you had this strong sense that you weren't Ingrid, that Ingrid wasn't your name, that you weren't a young girl, that you felt an equal to your parents, that you were somehow more than just this small child. How do you explain this sense of, at the same time, being Ingrid and yet also not being Ingrid?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question, because yeah, I came back with the sense of detachment, with the sense that I have an awareness that I didn't have before the experience. And yeah, it was that sense of like, yeah, I have this physical body, but I am not this body. I am more than this. I have experienced that a state of connection, of oneness, I experienced what I call pure presence and absolute consciousness. And now I am in that sense, like Sister Jayanti was mentioning, it was the sense of I am eternal, I am more than this. And then when I look at my body, I just say, I'm not just this child, I'm more than this child. And then I would look at my parents and just realize they're not just my biological parents. I felt them as my equal, because I had experienced a state of oneness. And when I would look at other children, I'll be like, what is happening to these people? They don't know anything. And what was also really shocking for people around, it was also validation through abilities that I didn't have before the experience. And like you mentioned, I'm 2 years or close to 3. And then at this point, I can read and write. I can resolve mathematical problems. I can put together complex puzzles. And through times I could feel the sufferings of the world. I could just understand when people were talking and what they were talking about, even if it was adult conversation. And this was remarkable, because to me it was the sense, I am not learning any of this. I'm just remembering. So that brings us to that part of the eternal soul that I say Ingrid is a parenthesis in the eternity of who I am. So it was
Sister Jayanti, yeah. I wonder, Sister Jayanti, if you could pick up on that, this idea that we have an experience in this physical body that feels very real, but it's actually only a moment in an experience of eternity. And yet we have a connection to this lifetime, to the people that we're connected with in this lifetime. And yet somehow we are more than that as well. Can you just say something about this sort of dual existence almost that we have?
Think about all the poets and the playwrights who've existed in fairly recent modern times, in the last 500 years or so. And of course, William Shakespeare comes to mind instantly. But so many of them have referred to this world as a stage wherein we are all playing our parts on the stage. And so when I think about an eternal drama, an eternal stage in which there's a huge unlimited play going on, then yes, I, the soul, carry a recording of my total part within that eternal drama. And yes, I have this body now, but I was somewhere else before, and I don't need to know, but like Ingrid mentioned, there's a learning that happened before that one is able to access and draw out if one becomes aware of this unlimited consciousness. So there's an existence I had before in which I learned many things, and I carry that experience here. But at that point, when soul and body depart, separate, then the soul has a continuity and there'll be more experiences. And when I think about the word eternal, to me, the easiest representation of this word is a cycle, a circle, no beginning and no end, eternity. And it seems a very big subject to think about and dwell about. But when you bring it down to a human level and you think about the stage, this unlimited drama, and each one playing their own role. And so here am I playing my role in this particular form, in this particular body now. But that's not the only role I've played. I've played other roles before this, and there'll be other roles I'll play after this. And so there's both that sense of detachment from this physical form, but that detachment gives you an unlimited consciousness, so that gender, color, race, all these external identities that we think are me, in fact, I'm able to separate myself from these and all the biases that are connected with all these differences and boxes that I tick myself in. But on the one hand, I play my role, but on the other hand, when I have a moment of reflection, I'm able to step away from the role, step away from the stage, and be an observer of what's going on that stage. And of course, it gives me a deeper insight and greater understanding of what's going on around me, but also my purpose, like the soul of Ingrid had to come back and share this story and do all the things that Ingrid has done in her life, working as a scientist at NASA, doing all the other things, but knowing that this is a role that I play now, and I play it well. I play it to the best of my ability. And the relationships I have are also on the stage, part of this role. But I have an identity that is much, much more cosmic than that. And so to be stable in that awareness means I'm connecting with the inner being and the qualities of the inner being. If I just get stuck to my role of this limited time on the stage, there can be many, many attachments, there can be many dependencies, there can be a lot of emotional upheaval through witnessing all the scenes that everybody witnesses in their life, all the ups and downs. But this awareness of unlimited consciousness and the detachment from me, my role, the stage, and everybody else on the stage brings truth, wisdom, in which I'm able to understand what it is I need to do at any given moment. So very much in the present, but very aware that it's a role that I play.
And Ingrid, you talked about this sense of knowing who you truly were, and that some part of you always knew this, and it was a question of remembering it rather than learning it. It almost implies that deep within us, we have a knowing of the eternal nature of the self. Was that your experience?
Yes, very much. And just like, oh my God, Sister Jayanti just put it so beautifully. It was that knowing that, yeah, I wasn't just this, like I was mentioning before, it was that clarity that this is just one role I'm playing now. Yeah. And that's why when people will come and call my name, they come to me, Ingrid, I would just feel aggravated. Of course, now I understand that all this is needed, like Sister Jayanti is mentioning, but I was little. I was just 3-4 years old. And when they come and tell me, Ingrid, I'll be like, because I didn't feel attached to my name. And when there was a time when they made a new maid, she came and she's like, Ingrid, we're calling you for dinner. And I said, don't call me like that. That's not my name. And then she said, then how should we call you? And I said, what is your name? And the answer was amazing because I said, I do not need one. So for me, it was the sense of, I don't need names. And that was the time, I guess we will talk about this later, but I started to have communication, and the sense of that knowingness was part of that, not just knowing that I was more than this body, but that expansive communication with what I call beings of light. And it's when I started to hear them for the first time, and they said to me that it was going to take time for people to understand that I was correct, that names, or what we call labels, were not needed in the realm of the light.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that, and hear another extract from your film, because when you were in this state of being beyond time and space, you had this profound sense of the unlimited aspect, the eternal aspect of yourself. But in this dimension of light, you weren't alone. Let's hear what you had to say in the film.
Things went really, really hard, and I was in the worst of the moments. The help that I needed came in the most remarkable way, in the sense that I was being taken to the realm of the light during my sleep. At the time, I didn't know that I was having out-of-body experiences. And although all that was kind of disturbing, I wanted to happen because it was bringing me to that realm of the light. Then I guess at the time, the only thing I enjoyed really doing was going to sleep. And in one of these journeys, one day I was completely surrounded by starlight figures that were shining in all different colors. And I was like, wow, there's a being of light. And now they are here. It approached me and it touched me. And at that moment I said, oh, you are a being of light. By being in their presence and feeling that state of home that I was experiencing in that realm of the light, made me feel so well that I started to heal. And I started to eat, and I started to communicate with everyone again, and I just started to feel joyful and happy. And although they didn't do anything, the sense of love was such that nothing else was needed. And that was the teaching I got from the very beginning. Everything is going to be okay. And although I couldn't understand that many times, how this can be okay, that was always the teaching. Everything is happening for a reason, and everything is following a path of perfection. We just don't know this, because we're just living and understanding a very little piece of the picture. We don't know what anything is for. And later in my life, I learned that the purpose of this was the beings of light wanted to show me that home was not a place. Home was a state of being. Home, heaven, is here and now.
Amazing. So your near-death experience, Ingrid, seems to have been a catalyst for these out-of-body experiences that you were having when you went to sleep, and you described there beautifully these encounters with these beings of light. Who did you think those beings were at the time, and who do you think those beings are now with the benefit of hindsight?
I think that even like us, everything is a manifestation of consciousnness. So to me, it was just the presence of what we could call angels, ascended masters, guides. I have the clarity that the only aspect, we're not, this physical body, like we were mentioning, is not that only way in which consciousness manifests. It just manifests in just myriads of ways. And it also happens and manifests for us in the ways that we can understand it. And that for my mind as a 4-year-old, it had to be in a way that was clear for me. And to the point that there was later in my life, a moment when I started to see what we call spirit, which is when people die and we see the spirit of this person. And then I was shocked, and it didn't feel the same as the beings of light. And I my mom had revealed to me that she could see spirits too. And it's when I said, Mom, the beings of light and the spirits are not the same. And then my mom explain better. And then when I explain better, she's like, oh, I think that you're seeing angels. And I said, Mom, but I don't know, because they don't have wings, because all we knew was just their religion. And then is when because I've been communicating with the beings of light already for a while, I went and asked directly to them. The first thing is that I thought that the spirits and the beings of light were different and that I was different. And then I went with this question first. What is with these spirits? And I call them dark spirits because they produce me fear, not because there was nothing wrong with them. And then I was expecting to hear, yeah, you guys are different. And the beings of light said to me at that moment, that you call spirits, you, us, in essence, we're all the same. The only difference is the level of awareness that you have about who you truly are. I was like, oh. And the other incredible thing, when I asked them, my mom said that you are angels. Is that what you are? And then that was the answer that showed me how incredibly amazing and compassionate is the universe. They said to me, we are whatever you want us to be.
Fabulous.
So,
incredible. Sister Jayanti, I know within the tradition of the Brahma Kumaris, there has since the beginning been a gift that some have had to not just have profound meditation, but to almost travel to that dimension of light, which is beyond the physical world that we know. And you yourself have been one of those people. And as a child, you had many of these experiences that Ingrid is talking about. Can you say a few words about what the Brahma Kumaris understand by these encounters with beings of light? Who are they? What are they?
I think that the answer that they gave Ingrid is a very wise answer, because different people will call them by different names. And the word that comes to my mind when I used to see them, and now I understand a little more, I would also say that they're angels, beings of light. They don't have a body of bone and flesh like we do, but they have a form, but it's a form of light. And it's like, say, for example, if I'm sitting here and I have a telescope and you don't, well, with that telescope, I'm able to see that realm of light and experience a communication with these beings. And yes, there are also the dark ones, the ones who haven't yet evolved within their own consciousness and purity. And so no need to go there. But in terms of those beings of light, they're actually messengers of God's love, of God's peace. And they come to different individuals when individuals are ready to connect with them. And the message they share is God's message of love and light and peace. And so this is how scriptures have remembered them, different names, but essentially that same idea, that apart from this human form, all of us also have a subtle form. And when our consciousness is of that caliber, of that purity, it's like the third eye is open, and with that telescope, you're able to see what's going on in that dimension of light. But all of us can have that experience of our own form of light, and also that connection with those beings of light through meditation also. The experience of trance and traveling is another one, but just simply through meditation, I can experience the eternity of the spirit that Ingrid, you were talking about, but I can also experience that awareness of a subtle body, a body of light that I can adopt and use even here in this physical dimension. And if I keep my consciousness on that level and I experience that form of light, here, then I really truly feel that I'm here for a very specific purpose, and that is to be a messenger of peace, of light and love, so that then humanity, the human family, can move forward to that higher state of evolution.
So this is an absolutely tantalizing thought, that in this dimension of light, we can be experiencing other beings of light, but we are perhaps experiencing an aspect of ourselves, a perfected aspect of ourselves, which takes the form of this body of light. And that angels and the angelic realm isn't necessarily something that is beyond my reach, but something that I can achieve within my own consciousness. And I'd like very much during our time together to not just talk about these things, but also try and have an experience of these things. So for just a few moments, Sister Jayanti, could I invite you to just lead us into an experience of our angelic form of light and how we may make a connection with that?
It is tantalizing, as you said, Philippa, but try this. And those who are watching, many might be experienced meditators, and some might be experiencing these things for the first time. Try to meditate with your eyes open and keep your eyes gently open, not staring, but just gently open, and focus on that point of light that you see in front of you. And I'll share a few thoughts and invite you to follow these ideas. Reflecting on the things that I've been hearing about, I go on a journey. And firstly, it's a journey deep within myself, going deeper and deeper. I come to the awareness of the inner being. I am a point of light, radiant, shining, peaceful, and pure. This is my original state of being. And as I connect with myself, I realize that this is my true identity. I am a being of light. And now I have a choice. Can I take on my costume of light? Or do I want to take my physical costume? And so for a moment, I choose to experiment and feel I, the soul, in my sparkling costume, a costume of light. In this awareness, I am above the physical dimension, beyond time and space, in a realm of light. And now, very consciously, I choose to return to the physical dimension and adopt my physical costume. But I keep this experience of who I truly am with myself, so that now I can connect with myself, even though I'm in the physical world. I stay connected with my spiritual identity, and also honor all the relationships I have in the physical dimension. But now I know that whenever I choose, I can adopt my own costume of light. Om Shanti. I am peace. I am light.
Thank you so much, Sister Jayanti. I suppose the good news for anyone watching this is that you don't have to have a near-death experience to have this sense of being in the realm of light, that it is something that you can consciously practice and develop the skill of being able to experience these more subtle aspects of ourselves. And I think for most of us who have been on a spiritual journey of some sort or another, there is very often a sense of the spiritual path calling and prodding and poking you. And we can sometimes have a resistance to that and feel, I can hear what you're saying, but I'm not listening, not going there. It's not happening. I'm going to carry on with my life over here, doing something which at the moment feels much more interesting. And we kind of, as if we sometimes have to struggle and suffer and experience what it is we don't want, to sometimes quite dramatic extents, in order to then have a desire for a different experience. And I know, Ingrid, that this was very much the case for you. After this profound experience, you reached a place where you didn't want to know anything about that. You just wanted to be a regular kid in college, the same as everyone else. Let's just hear another extract from the film in which you talk about this somewhat more challenging time in your life.
So at that time of my life, I could not really appreciate my uniqueness. I reached the point where now my uniqueness was a burden. So I joined college, and it's when I told the beings of light, I want to be like everyone else. And at the same time, there was situations were very hard at home. My parents were at the verge of divorcing. Things were going hard at home. It's like when all the challenges come together. I guess this is the moment where these two very deep questions knock the door of my life. I ask, when did we stop being one with the whole? And how is it possible to forget who we truly are? I kept asking the beings of light, why me? Why this is happening to me? And it's when they answered to me, in 20 years you will understand. What? 20 years, imagine, and even at that age, 20 years is like a forever and a day. And they say someday you will pass these teachings to others. No. At that moment of my life, I was not interested. I want to become a scientist, I'm not interested. I'm not teaching this to anyone. I asked the beings of light just to give me a break, pretty much. I wanted to be like everyone else. And this is the compassion of the universe. We're not forced. I mean, at that moment, it was like, okay, you're not going to see us or hear us for a while. When you are ready, it will happen. Awakenings. Now I was in the absolute knowing that source or the creator or God or ultimate reality, however we want to call it, was the essence of absolutely everything. Everything was it. And at that moment is when I realized that 20 years had passed, as they had said, because the two questions I asked 20 years before were answered. How we stop being one, when did we stop being one, and how is it even possible to forget who we truly are? And the answer came, like, again, no time, not 20 years had passed. And the answer was, one never stopped being one. One never left the source. One just became distracted and seemingly forgot. So what is the purpose of time? And they say the purpose of time and experience is to help you remember who you truly are, is to bring you back to source.
So they're two kind of contrasting experiences really of earlier in your life, at the beginning of that 20-year process, Ingrid, and at the end of your life, when the realization of what was happening to you became clearer to you. Looking back now, what do you feel was the purpose of the struggle and the quite extreme challenges that you went through? What purpose did that serve?
Yeah, I think at the moment, like Sister Jayanti mentioned before, we come here and now is the part where, okay, I have to wear this costume and be part of this role that I'm playing here. But at the time, I could not accept my uniqueness. It became a burden. For me, it was like, I experienced during my near death, I experienced myself as a being of light. And later in my life, it was even revealed to me that when I saw the light that came from below, the beings of light said to me that light was not a light outside of yourself. That was the light, your own light, the light of yourself. So I had imagine I was a being that was pretty much, compared with the rest of the people my age, I was living, like I would say, in the clouds. I was like a helium balloon. My grandmother became very important. She brought more teachings to my life. So I was living a spiritual life that was not really something that the rest of the people was experiencing in Colombia. So for me, the contrast was really, really extreme at that time. But the important thing at that moment is that it's incredible how even at that moment, I will look at other people, and at the beginning of my experience, having all this spiritual knowledge and all that can make us arrogant. And I will look at others and say, why they're so slow? Why they don't get it? What is going wrong with these people? And then now when I went to the experience where, yeah, definitely I needed to ground, I needed to experience more what Ingrid was. I picked a career that was very grounding. And after that, I went through 20 years of a lot of challenges, a lot of sufferings, because I put the analogy at the beginning. I was walking in a room with the light on, and the moment I disconnected from the beings of light, it's like I turn off the light. And if you're in a room with the lights on, you know where everything is. But the moment you turn off the light, all the furniture become obstacles. But those obstacles were very important because they brought me to mature. They brought me to grow. They brought me to be more compassionate, more open, more understanding, more empathic. So later in my life, I was like, oh, I get it now. I cannot judge the ones that don't remember, because look how I also forgot. And for a while, I also got tangled in the drama and in the narrative and all the things. And it was that clear realization, oh, there's no place for judgment, just for more opening and again, more compassion and more love. And that's when the true service happened, because now I was completely devoted to wanting to just share with people without that judgment, without feeling different. Before growing up, I felt different. now I was like, there's no difference. The difference is in my mind.
I mean, in a way, we have glossed over some of your challenges because you did serve at a military base in a war zone, and you were military targets, and one of your colleagues even went against the advice to not wander off, and he wandered off and he was killed. You witnessed a massacre. You were in a region where there were huge natural calamities, and then later in your life, after you were married, your husband, who served in the Navy, got called away immediately. You were left on your own with a baby who then became sick. You yourself had heart issues. I mean, it was literally one thing after another, and you ended up with post-traumatic stress disorder. And at your lowest moment, you even contemplated taking your own life, and possibly even taking the life of your baby so that you wouldn't be separated. I mean, that is the bottom of the barrel. And yet from that place, you sprung back up. So do you see a direct cause and effect between hitting the bottom of the barrel and reaching a place where you said, okay, I surrender to your will and I'm now ready? Do you see that as a cause and effect?
Yes, of course. And that's the point where I think you have two choices, really. Or you take your life or your ego cracks open. And at that moment was that place where I just left it all in the hands of the divine. And my question, when I started to pray so deeply at that moment, I was not asking for anything in my outer reality to be changed. My prayer was, God, help me see, because I cannot see. I have become blinded. I lost the way. So it was that moment where I went back and opened that door to connect. Like I say, only had two choices: or I leave the body, or I pretty much asked for the way to resolve it. And then I was guided incredibly to this amazing, the answer was simple: look for help. And then I was guided to a psychologist the same day. 3 people guided me to the same doctor. And then talking later to this person was when I had the clarity of my experiences. He asked me to write my sufferings. I wrote all my sufferings and we read the list together. We've been talking for like almost a year. And he said to me, Ingrid, in my 37 years of practice, I never saw anybody that has suffered this much and is mentally stable. And then that question again, why me? Why me came out. And the answer that he gave me was incredible, because it was what turned on the light back on. And again, it was a very simple answer, but very profound at that moment. He said, why not? And it's when, what? He started to say, look, thanks to this, you have done this, and thanks to this, you have done that, and thanks. And he started to put it all together. And in my head, my neurons connected, and I saw purpose behind everything. And at that moment, I think 3 miracles happened. First, I had the realization that, wow, none of this ever happened to me. It happened for me. So I went to experience, I went to that place of being the cause and not the effect. The level of the cause and not the level of the effect. And the other thing that happened after that was the clarity that nothing was happening right there at that moment. My only truth is that I was sitting in front of this doctor, talking to him, and the rest, all those memories were in my head, and I could decide what to do with them. And the last, what I call miracle at that moment, was discovering true forgiveness. And it was that deep sense that at that moment, there was really nothing to forgive, because there was that inherent purpose and goodness behind everything, and everything had happened for me to be at this moment of clarity, awareness, openness. So what was to forgive? So, so all those challenges brought me to this moment of clarity and awareness and awakening and understanding and connection.
Of course, forgiveness is such a sacred path because it opens up the heart and it opens up to a more expanded understanding of the world around us. And Sister Jayanti, you have in a way some parallels with Ingrid in that you were also operating in a scientific community. You were training in medicine as a teenager, 18, 19-year-old. You felt the door of spirituality right there, and someone was knocking on your door, and yet you were like, not sure this is going to happen for me, kind of resistance that came up for you at that time. And of course, in the 50 odd years that have passed since then, you have witnessed the spiritual journey of so many people. And I'm sure seen the way in which they have arrived at that place of embarking on a spiritual journey, having had some quite profound times of suffering and challenge. What for you is that resistance about, and what for you is the purpose of the suffering and challenge that often comes before we awaken?
It's a journey. And so you would expect that there'd be different milestones along that journey. And if I just take my own experience, which is a tiny microscope of the things that Ingrid has shared, age 8, I was having these amazing trance experiences and meditative experiences. Age 14, I was thinking that, well, I don't know what all that is about, and I don't want to go down there. I want to see what life is here. And I had wise parents who gave me permission to do that. But even through that journey from age 14 to age 18, so it was a much shorter journey, what was happening was I'd go to India and I'd meet the people of the Brahma Kumaris and the founder there. And he even predicted that someday I would be a spiritual teacher, and I couldn't comprehend that. It wasn't at that moment something I could understand. And I'd come back to London, which is where I was living with my parents and studying. And this would be real, and that would be a dream. And when I'd go to Mount Abu, the headquarters, and this happened a few times, that was real. The spiritual dimension was absolutely tangible, and London and my life there would seem like a dream. And then it was when I decided to spend time in India that I think what happened there was I was able to have a glimpse of the physical dimension in a very different way, and then decide, well, let me find out what is the spiritual story about. And when I gave it my focused time and attention, then of course the door opened again and amazing experiences began, and they've continued. And so if I want to articulate a journey that many of us have been through in words, then I would say that as we're young, there can be very dramatic experiences because in a sense, we're very pure and clean and innocent. And it's very easy to lift a child or a young adult into a different dimension of reality. And then when our attention gets diverted, and Ingrid uses the word distraction, and I think that's a very accurate description, when we get distracted by the material dimension and then we immerse ourselves in that, we lose contact with the spiritual truth and that reality. And sometimes it's curiosity, sometimes it's suffering, sometimes it's having an insight into what the world is going through, not necessarily my personal suffering, but really being able to see things in a very detailed way of what's going on in the world. And the yearning comes and you start another journey. And of course, the universe is always ready to help and forgive and give. And so you connect and the journey starts again. And so this may happen more than once in a journey, but it is that same thing that when you get engrossed in the material side of life, you forget that there's another dimension. And so this becomes the most important thing. And yet when you find yourself in a little bit of space in which there's time to reflect, then that inner calling again begins, and you're able then to connect with the higher reality. And in fact, what I would say is that the material and the spiritual are both aspects of reality. It isn't that one is a dream and the other is real. But in fact, now as a person meditating on a daily basis, I would say that my meditation is to recharge my inner battery. And that keeps my consciousness in the right level, even as I engage in all the things that I'm connected with. And it's an active life, it's a busy life, meeting many people and hearing many different things, experiencing different things. But that time of reflection and contemplation, especially in the early morning hours, is very enriching and nourishing for the self. And it keeps one in touch with that part of reality, which is also the truth, so that then you begin to learn how to apply those truths in the things that you're engaged in here. And so say, for example, it's no more that there's a distraction of playing a role. There is a role to be played, but it doesn't trap the soul. One is able to play that role, but also even in that engagement, there can be moments of detachment from the physical into the spiritual dimension, so that that stays as a reality. And most importantly, the humility, the love, the compassion, all of that is then accessible. When you cut yourself off from that dimension and you just stay engrossed in this, then of course the biggest danger is the ego that comes, and ego then manifests in so many different ways that are hurtful for the self, but also damaging for others. And if you manage to keep the spiritual and the physical together, because soul and body are together, it's not that they're separate, they are together. They have a separate existence, but at this moment as a human being, it's both together. And so as I play my role in this human dimension, I don't lose touch with the spiritual qualities and values of the inner being of light. And so there's a different awareness of life and a different contribution that one is able to make for one's own self and for everyone else around the self. But this is the paradox and the challenge, to keep the spiritual consciousness whilst playing a role in the material world. But I think it's possible.
Absolutely. And it's not that the challenges all come to an end when you embark on a spiritual journey. For many, that's when the challenges actually step up and become even greater. But I love the way in which, for both of you, there is a sense of when the time is right, it will happen. And, you know, spirit or source is never going to kind of bring you to that point before time. It will be at the right time, and it will be perfect. Ingrid, we've talked about some of the difficulties and challenges that can be encountered on this journey. Do you want to just lead us in a few moments of reflection, and like Sister Jayanti has done, given us a few practical tools that we can work with in our everyday life? If you could just lead us in a few moments of meditation and guide us with your own thinking, that would be great.
Yes, I would love to. So I want to just bring us into a beautiful meditation called Holding Our Life in Our Hand. So throughout the meditation, we're going to put our hand in our heart. And because the heart is the one that keeps us here in connection with life, then we will be in that intention of holding that heart in our hand. So the heart is the center of love and life. So from the time of my near-death experience, I became very aware of my heart beating. And years later, I realized that the beating of my heart was like a mantra, and that it was happening for every one of us. And like, oh gosh. So I felt that sense of connection through that mantra. It was like a sacred sound. And then later I learned a mantra from the Mayan culture, and it was Hum All, which means together like the fingers and the hand, beating together like one heart. So as I guide you during the meditation, like I said, we will put our hand in our heart, and then we will breathe deep in. And as we breathe out, we will say the mantra Om. Then we breathe in, and when we breathe out again, the sound Ah, which in many spiritual traditions is known as the name of God. And we will repeat this cycle 2 or 3 times, and then we will have the intention throughout this meditation to be connected like one heart. So let's lower our gaze or close our eyes, whatever feels best for you. And then we're sitting in a comfortable position, doing nothing. And we feel the ground beneath our feet holding us, making us feel safe, grounded, stable. And then we simply relax. Relax your feet, your legs, your belly, your torso, your arms. Relax your neck. Relax your face. Simply relax. And having the intention of being connected with each other, let's put our hand in our chest, in the area of the heart, and let's breathe in. Out. Om. In. Out. In. Out. Om. In. And we feel that connection with each other. Om. One last time. And this meditation is a reminder that our heart is always beating, always connected with life. No matter our cultural beliefs, religion, gender, color, age, our heart is always giving, keeping us alive and connected through love, vibration, and sound. To me, it is a reminder of the presence of the divine source, which is present with us here and now. And is that balance that Sister Jayanti mentioned, that balance between our human existence and our soul. And we open our eyes completely slowly. And we look around and feel the connection with our heart and each other's hearts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. A beautiful practice that really brings us to that still place within where everything is actually always okay. It's just we sometimes can't make contact with that. It is a phenomenon that we are witnessing in the world at this moment, that people everywhere do seem to be going through some kind of a shift. And we talked about the challenges that we face on our individual journeys, the difficulties, the moments of suffering that bring us to a place of awakening. And perhaps there is something similar going on in the process for the whole global community, for the world as a whole, that we are witnessing many challenges. We've all of us been through 18 months of a global pandemic. There are, of course, many challenges that lie in the aftermath of that pandemic, which we're trying to address. Of course, we have the whole environmental situation that we're facing. It can almost feel like this is Earth's wake-up call. This is humanity's wake-up call. And that what we're sharing here this afternoon is our individual journeys, but this is happening at the level of the collective. Let's just hear a final extract from your film. There's requests coming in the chat box to just mention the name of the film again. It is The Near-Death Experience of Ingrid Honkala. That's what you need to search for, and it will come up. But Ingrid, in this part of the film, you're speaking very much to this whole issue of the global awakening that we seem to be witnessing.
World, how we can say that things are going better for someone, the world is in such disaster. And people come to me with the feeling of disempowerment, and they say, what can I do? I'm just one person. Look at the world, what all these teachings can do for the world. And I said, you can do everything or you can do nothing. It all depends. You can do nothing if you see the problems of the world as a whole. So I put the example of a house. Say that you have a big castle and the castle is in absolute mess. Every room, everything in this house, in this castle is just disorganized. There was a huge party, a mess, a disaster. The moment that you think that you can clean all this house in one morning, in 1 minute, in one moment, the feeling of overwhelming is such that you will become disempowered. What can you do? Nothing. So you cannot see the problems of the world as a whole, because then you disempower yourself. But the moment you think, oh, what if I start room by room? What if I start by clearing up the kitchen? What if I cannot even do the whole kitchen? What if I start by the table? And little by little, the moment you organize this space and you pat yourself on the shoulder, oh, I did this. So now you're putting that you're learning in practice. You're empowering yourself. I can do something. Peace starts with each one of us. The moment we expect that others do it, the moment I look outside and say, look at the mess outside, I cannot do anything, I lost the battle. But the moment I say, I am this being capable of loving, capable of giving, then now I am becoming that light. And each one of us can be the light in the path of each other. I am not a light that is going to work alone, because one light is easy to be blown away by the wind. But what if I start joining like we're doing here? Another person that already discovered, I have that inner light. I have that inner power, and all these lights start joining, and now we become a huge flame. And this is actually happening this moment in the world. Although there's still a lot of chaos out there, there's a lot of people waking up right now. A lot of people that have been shaking so hard by all these challenges and all these hardships that we're starting to realize, what can we actually do? What can I do myself?
Very thought-provoking. And I think, Sister Jayanti, anyone with us on this program today will resonate with that sentiment of overwhelm when we look at the world situation and feel that sense of helplessness. What can I as one individual do? And yet, as Ingrid is saying there, each one of us can be the light on the path for each other. How do you see, as someone of spirit, that humanity can respond to these challenges, even though we are each of us only one individual?
There's a very interesting concept that I mentioned earlier in the context of the spirit being eternal, and that is the concept of a circle, a cycle. And if you think about 24-hour cycle, the 12-month cycle, the season cycle, everything in nature seems to move through cycles and circles. You don't see a straight line in nature. Straight lines have been human inventions, but it doesn't exist out there in nature at all. And so I'm seeing how at the moment it's been a long period of darkness, but it does feel as if the light has entered the world, and it's as if dawn has broken. And what's coming further ahead is actually the day. And so I think we're now in this very interesting period of the transition from the very, very dark night of huge suffering for humanity, but the day about to begin. And those who are aware and awake and alert will prepare themselves for the day. But even if they haven't prepared, it's okay. Everything's going to be all right. Why? Because the source, the divine, the supreme is the parent of all. And so everybody will come to an awareness of peace and the experience of peace. And this might sound like a fairy story, but I think that if I look around the world and nature, and I see that nature is actually a very powerful, dominant force in the world, human beings have thought that they can be the masters, but actually this amazing world drama and nature, and of course the guidance of the light from above, is more powerful than anything we alone can do. But yes, we can be co-creators together as a human family. We can work with that supreme being of light. We can work with the angelic beings of light and bring about change within ourselves. You know how powerful one thought can be? Mm-hmm. One thought can shift my life and turn it around completely, and I can ascend. One thought can bring me down. And so just imagine if instead of just one powerful thought, all of us together hold a powerful thought of peace and love, that energy multiplies and that energy reaches out. And even a minority that's active and awake and alert can actually shift the whole dimension here in this realm through our power of love and light and consciousness. So I think that having been through the huge amount of suffering that humanity's gone through, that has been a wake-up call for many, many people. Yes, there are some people who will still deny that there's anything happening, and they'll say, oh, it's going to be okay. But I'm thinking that a powerful minority can actually bring about a shift in the majority also. You know, if you think about a container of water and you want to freeze that water, well, the way it works is that a molecule here, a molecule here, and molecule here begins to freeze. And so at first it seems it's going to take a long time, one by one by one by one. But when a certain level of critical mass has been reached and a certain number of molecules are frozen, bingo, the whole container freezes. And so for a few, and at this moment, it does feel like a minority still, even though I see a great process of awakening going on, it's still a minority. But as that minority comes together and becomes more powerful and more stable and consistent, the power of light is going to spread everywhere. And for sure, there will be peace and the day will come.
A beautiful sense of the future calling us, and a future in which everything is going to be all right, even if in the present moment it doesn't always feel like that. We are getting some questions coming in on the chat, and I would like to invite anyone who's joining us in this event, if you have got a question for either Sister Jayanti or for Ingrid about anything that they have said or anything that we have been talking about, do please post your questions in the chat and we'll try and pick them up in a few moments' time and answer some of your questions. But Ingrid, Sister Jayanti there's been talking about the Supreme Being. And I'd like to kind of, in a way, invite you, and you're in safe company here, you can say whatever you feel is in your heart, but invite you to share with us that experience you had of the profound love of Source that was holding you and connecting with you and making you feel like you were really in the lap of divine love. Tell us a little bit more about that experience.
Yes, oh, thank you for inviting me to share that, because even from my near-death experience, I had that first contact with that absolute presence of silence and love and connection and oh, it's pretty much, I cannot have words to describe what this was. But it wasn't until years later that I started to have more clarity of what all this was. And incredibly, many things happened on the way, but one of the experiences that opened completely that door. Oh, this is one thing. Every time after my near-death experience, and when I was giving talks, I always said that after my near-death, because the out-of-body experience is happening and the beings of light and everything else, I always kept saying that for me, it's like the door never closed. And years later, the beings of light said to me, Ingrid, of course the door never closed, because there is no door. The door is created by us, conditioning and beliefs and attachment to our narrative, the dramas, like we were mentioning before, we get distracted, so we create that door. But then, yeah, when I was ready and I was in that place where I could take all these layers off and shine my light again, it was a day I was driving my car, incredibly just driving the car, something like a daily thing. And then it's when I felt the presence of the divine absolutely everywhere. It was that sense of like, there was nothing that was not it. It just felt like every pore of my being, the windshield, the wheel, everything was a manifestation of the divine. And it was that sense of profound gratitude and appreciation, because it was that place where they observe and the observer become one. It was that, oh, there is no separation. I just felt that sense of Source is everything. And then it was that presence of love that permeated everything and everywhere. And it's when I had that clear realization that that's why when I was a little child, I could be lost in a piece of lint. I could be lost in and just looking at the space. I could just be lost in looking at animal and a person and my hands, because the presence of the divine was everywhere. So that's what is for me, is just that eternal presence, love, life, goodness. Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. I mean, we can feel it as you're speaking, such a tangible experience. And Sister Jayanti, Ingrid was talking very beautifully about that, cleaning up the mess one room at a time, or even just one table at a time. And we do have a huge task. We have a huge house to clean up. To what extent do you feel that that task can really only now be accomplished by making a connection with something that is greater than ourselves, which Ingrid is calling source and you are calling supreme being? And is that something which is new for humanity at this time, that we can have that direct connection and direct experience, or is that something that has actually been available to us all the time and we just haven't known how to access it or connect it? And if we have a desire to connect with that now, how do we do that?
Human beings have been trying to sort things out and make things better for a long time, but it feels as if everything we invent or create, there seem to be side effects, repercussions in a negative way. I won't go through the list of things that have happened to humanity in that search, but it's happened fairly frequently. We think this is going to be the solution, and a little while later we realize that, well, it wasn't really the solution, and it's just complicated matters even more. And this happens in politics, it happens in science, it happens in terms of the environment, the economy, but we keep trying. But I really deeply feel now that it has to be that partnership of the divine being and each one personally, individually, experiencing that unlimited love and that transformation that happens within the self through the power of that love. I'll give you one example. You know, for 10 years, 11 years now, I've been part of the climate change conferences that happen. They've been happening every year, except last year it didn't happen. So this year, again in Glasgow, we are having COP26 take place. And more through that period where I used to see environmental activists really not interested in anything spiritual. For the last 5-6 years, I've seen a shift. In fact, I can say that it was in Paris when we had the COP there, and there'd just been quite a massive upheaval in France. And then the French government and the people of France decided with a lot of courage they were still going to host this big event. And it was there that I realized that many of the environmental activists were now ready to embrace people of faith, people of spirituality. And the politicians were talking about lifestyle change. And so somebody commented that the preachers are now silent, but the politicians have now become preachers and saying it needs a change of heart, it needs a change of lifestyle. And so on a personal level, am I ready to change my lifestyle to something that's more sustainable and something that offers respect to the planet and other species and all forms of life? And if I'm ready to make that change, and I'm taking the power to be able to make my changes possible from the divine, because I on my own, it's difficult, not just because I'm alone, but also because even with all the habits that I've acquired through this lifetime, I want this, I need this, I need that. And I keep thinking that, well, how can I let go of all of this? But once I've experienced that state of bliss, not just God's love and God's light and peace, but something which is really even beyond happiness, then lifestyle changes that can help the planet and help humanity, it's not a big deal. It really isn't. Because what you're experiencing is something so powerful that it energizes you to do whatever you need to do on the external level, to deal with the anger, to deal with the lack of forgiveness, to deal with the insecurities and fears that we all have. The power of pure love can change all of this. And so every human individually, in connection with the divine, can bring about the changes within themselves. And yes, one being at a time, but all of us together with that connection. And this is how the world truly can be put right. But the bottom line is that if I'm unwilling to change, then I don't experience that transformation and things get stuck. But if I change, I'll see the world around me change, and I'll connect with other change agents. And yes, we can see big shifts happening in the world, in lifestyle changes, in being able to go beyond negativity and come to that state in which our original pure qualities begin to shine again. And there you go, you have a better world, a world filled with light. But yes, it does need the power of the divine to give us that strength and courage to make the changes.
Terrific answer. Thank you, Sister Jayanti. And we've got some fantastic questions coming in. So do get your questions in now before the end of our session. So we're going to just be jumping around topics for a few minutes now. A first question that has come in, which you may have different answers to, I don't know, let's see. But you've both talked about this sense of being in an expanded awareness when you have the traveling to this region of light, whether it's in an out-of-body experience or just in meditation. And Ingrid, you described still having a sense of you, of still being you in that dimension. Is there a point at which that sense of identity dissolves into a universal identity and you lose that individual awareness or consciousness? Or is that something which stays regardless for eternity? It's an interesting question. It's a deep philosophical question. Let's start with you, Ingrid.
In my, I have had few experiences, my near death and couple more, where and this is scary for some people because I actually experienced the sense of nothingness. I went to the place of, and when people ask me what nothing means, I said, the moment I tell you what is, it becomes something. So I think it can only be experienced, but I lost the sense of self. There was a moment in which I was experiencing just absolute connection, like dissolution with the whole. But when people get scared about what is this nothingness, I said at the same time, no, is the nothingness because is say that you are, or the mind that you have at this moment is in a box, is what you know. But at that moment, when you enter in connection with that totality, you go outside the box. So the limited being that you think you were dissolves, and now you become whole. So at the same time is this sense of nothingness, but is wholeness. Nothingness because it's out of the realm of what you know, but wholeness because now you are the totality. You're huge. And there was an experience that I had one time. I wake up in my bedroom in the middle of the night, and I was so huge that I couldn't almost fit in the bedroom. So it was that sense of like, I am enormous, and I was in my physical body. I wasn't even having a near-death experience or nothing like that. So is that knowing that, wow, I am this and I am that. Yeah, and I can, like Sister Jayanti said, play the role and keep the divine in everything I'm doing. I don't have to create separations within the mind.
This is our kind of limited human brains in a way that are coming up with these questions. But Sister Jayanti, in meditation, there is, if you're fortunate, there is often the experience of forgetting anything about who you are and just being lost in the experience of love. For you, is there always a sense or a thread that connects you back to your individual identity, or is there a moment when you just become part of the expansion of love?
In meditation, first there's a sense of communication with the Supreme, the Divine, the Source, by whatever name, but that light. And there comes a moment when it's no more thought communication. Anyway, it's not through words we reach the divine, it's through the power of our thoughts, our mind. But thoughts become still, the thinking has now finished, and now there's just simply the being and the experience. And yes, the description that you were sharing, Ingrid, is very similar. There isn't that sense of I separate from the divine, but really being absorbed in that vastness of love. And then when I come back out of the meditation to the things that I need to do here on this planet, on this plane, there isn't a sense of separation, but there's a different feeling. And the feeling is of companionship, of the soul connecting with the divine and still close, but in the form of a friend, a companion. And so the more I keep this awareness alive, and it's up to me to keep that consciousness, and it's easy to slip away from that because all these distractions continue to be distractions, even though it's wonderful work that you might be engaged in. You're seeing the results of the goodness of that power working, but it's easy to then get engrossed in the work rather than in the being. And so the trick is to keep in that awareness of the being, in which there's this companionship of the divine, so that then it's not me alone trying to do anything, but it is with that support of the companion, and that love stays, that light stays. But I know that God is my companion rather than me being absorbed in that love. So I do what I need to do, but it's with guidance, it's with direction. And so whatever is then happening here is going to be very worthwhile and meaningful, filled with divine purpose.
You're nodding along to that, Ingrid, as Sister Jayanti is speaking. And I know in the film you say at one point that actually we are never alone. We are never alone. We are always held in love. And a lot of people are saying that this conversation today has been like a homecoming, that it's been like coming home to a knowing that is there within each of us. And it's in a way giving us permission to really own that and make a connection with that. A slightly more practical question, but touching on the experience earlier on in our conversation, when Ingrid, you were saying in your out-of-body near-death experience that you were able to be with people who were still in the physical realm and almost be part of, you know, like your thought of your mum reached your mum. So clearly there is still a communication that is happening between those who have died and those who are still physically here. And the question is, what would you suggest as the best response to a soul who has died, to a soul who has now left their body? How should we open our thoughts or minds or a sense of connection to that being in a way that is helpful to them?
Wow, yes, I love this question, because later in my life, when I asked actually what was the purpose of my near-death experience, the answer I received from Source was to bring the message of the power of connection, that message of that we are all connected always. And that's what happened when I at the moment, I didn't understand what you mean, the purpose of connection. So the beings of light brought me to see that when I saw my body suspended in the water, I didn't want to come back to that body, but that was still my human mind, my ego mind. That's not what Ingrid wants. But there was a bigger purpose, and it was coming back and bringing all these messages and these clarities and doing all these. And then the beings of light said to me, that's why you went to meet the maid and you went to meet your mom, because you were going to come back. And I said, so if I was going to come back, why did I waste time going to the maid's room? And the answer was incredible, because they said, because that's where we wanted to show you contrast. When you went to meet your mom, look, unconditional love, complete connection. So it doesn't matter if you were in the realm of the spirit and your mom was in the physical realm, that connection is still there, because it's love, is eternal. Love cannot be destroyed. And then what happened when I went to meet the maid? That's what they wanted to show me, that contrast. There was no connection. This lady mistreated us, so there was nothing really. There was not that unconditional love there. So they said to me, look what happened when there is no connection. They will let you drown. There will be division. There will be separation. There would be war. Wow. But look what your mom did. She was able to listen. 10 minutes away from home, she was the one that rescued you. The person right there next to you couldn't even feel you. So see, it doesn't matter. Like when we talk about time and space, it doesn't exist when there is connection, when there is love. So I said to the people that have lost their loved ones to know that as long as we are connected in that place of love. When my mom passed last year and I was so sad, and I asked the beings of light, what is all this for? Because I was suffering so much, her passing. And the answer was amazing, because they say to claim the light back. You are sad because you love her. So feel that empty space that you feel in your chest and your belly, feel it with that love. Feel it with that light. And that presence will always be there. Yeah, you allow the feelings of sadness to be there. Do a practices of grieving. If you are able, just move your body. It is so important to grieve. And then, little by little, allow yourself to go to that place of, you will be sad, but now, the more you know they are there with us, then and going to that place of creating a space, like Sister Jayanti was mentioning, meditating, knowing that that love is present, you're able to connect and feel that presence.
So we are eternally connected through the power of love. Is absolutely what you're saying. Some beautiful comments coming in from people saying that as they're listening to you speaking, they have tears rolling down their cheeks because they're feeling so moved. And it is a topic that, you know, people feel very close to. It's close to all of our hearts. We've all of us lost loved ones. And so it's so comforting to feel that that connection of love is eternal and can still be there. Sister Jayanti, first of all, I don't know if you want to add anything to this question of what is the best way to send out a vibration of love to serve and help the departed soul. But another question that's come in is part of Ingrid's story when she reached rock bottom and began to pray and said, look, okay, whoever, whatever, help me. How important is that asking for help in that moment of absolute desperation? So 2 questions there.
Ingrid's description of the power of love and how that connects us is absolutely beautiful, and I would agree completely. And I know that sometimes when there's a loved one who's departed, it's not just love, but it's a lot of attachment. But also there can be a mixture of concern for myself, self-pity. Woe is me, what's going to happen to me now? And so the way to make sure that it's only pure love that reaches the soul that is left, so that that pure love is able to support them on their onward journey rather than hold them back. Because if it's my attachment, if it's my self-pity, then that can be a hindrance for their journey also, because the connection is so strong that my feelings reach them. And so the way to make sure that it's only pure love is to keep the source, that being of light, the supreme. There can be many beings of light, like we heard earlier, angels, but the supreme being. If I hold the supreme in my thoughts and let my love go via the supreme to the one who has left, then what I'm doing is making sure that it's only pure love that's reaching out to the other. And of course, added to my pure love is also the love of the source, the love of the divine. And so that soul is able to receive my pure love, but also the love of the divine. And that definitely comforts them and supports them and helps them in their journey. And they'll be able to feel it, definitely. So the near-death experience story is a very powerful illustration that the soul is eternal, the connection of love is eternal, and thoughts reach those whom we love, even away, nothing to do with physical distance or even time, be able to cross the barriers of time also. And the second question, yes, I do believe that sometimes a soul has to reach that point of total humility, where there's no more ego left, in which I'm ready to ask for help, because there's a journey of the human soul in which I can do it, I can manage. And when I let go of that completely, and I know that I on my own cannot manage anymore, but I know that there is divine help available, and I am ready to let go of my ego and say, I need that help. There are no doors, as you beautifully shared earlier, Ingrid. It was only my own mind that had created the barriers and the doors. And so immediately my letting go of ego, my humility at that moment means that I can feel the help reach me and carry me out of the bottom of the pit to that reality of that existence of light.
Lovely, thank you. That was a question from Shruti. Ingrid, anything you want to add to that in terms of what you experienced when you did finally reach the point of, we can call it surrender, actually, ready to surrender any sense that you were able to control what was happening?
No, incredibly at that moment, you, like Sister Jayanti said, you have to let go all resistance. It's the moment where it's not letting go anything else, it's like let go the resistance. It's a moment of complete surrender. There's nothing I was there to do. And my prayer was just, God, help me see. Help me see with your eyes, because my eyes are closed. So yeah, it's that moment of, and accept also, the surrender come with accepting the guidance, because the guidance at that moment was very simple. And again, like Sister Jayanti mentioned, it was being completely humble. And my prayer every day when I wake up in the morning is, God, keep me humble. So I'm open to listen, so I'm open to receive. So this is for the daily life. And then at that moment, is like I said before, the guidance was so simple: look for help. And I have been arrogant and in my role as a mom, as a scientist, I can do it all. I can manage it all. Before I would have said, I don't need a psychologist. I'm not crazy. I'm not this. And now at this moment, I was completely open to follow the guidance. And it came, like I mentioned, in a way of a synchronicity. 3 people, complete different sources, one day, same doctor. Wow. I'm like, I have it clear. I have to go meet this person. And it was amazing. It was through the help of a person. Because I could have said, oh, the beings of light or source at that moment gave me the answer. No, it was us. We're here to support and help each other. I said, each one of us is the missing piece of the puzzle that we need to complete each other. So I'm like, wow, this person, and the power of this meeting with this person was that he was a listener. Look at the power of healing when we're being listened and when we learn to listen. So
it's a lovely sentiment that, you know, the divine can help us through other people. You know, help can come via other people. It doesn't necessarily come as a bolt from the sky. Sister Jayanti, we've throughout the time we've had together had moments to pause and reflect, and I think we've reached another one of those moments when it would be great to just sit with all of what has been spoken about today, the power of love, our eternal connection with each other, the divine love that we can tap into at any moment. If you could just lead us in a few moments of our closing reflection, and we can just allow all of that to slowly sink in, that would be beautiful.
What I'd like to do is just say thank you to Ingrid for sharing with such eloquence and sincerity your own experiences, and Philippa for creating the right questions that have allowed all of this to emerge in such a lovely way. So thank you to both of you and those who had the inspiration to make all this happen. And to all the viewers, of course, who are taking their time to listen and watch. Sitting quietly, I come to the awareness of the light that I am. I, the soul, shine in the center of the forehead. I am a being of light. I am a being of peace. And in this consciousness, I connect with the divine, the supreme, the source of love, infinite love, unconditional love, non-judgmental love, love that empowers, love that heals, love that uplifts, love that transforms, love that accepts me as I am. And the power of this love reaches not only I, the soul, but the power of this love reaches out to my entire human family. And human hearts begin to soften. and barriers begin to come down. And hope is ignited. And a vision appears that the power of this love can truly dispel all darkness and bring light into this world of ours again. I stay merged in this ocean of love. And from this space, I come back to the physical dimension. But now, I keep the divine, the source, with myself as my companion as I return to do all the things I need to do in the physical dimension. Om Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sister Jayanti. I think both your experience and Ingrid's experience has pulled all of us into an experience of this divine realm of light that you both talk about so eloquently. Before we close, it would be nice to just finish with a little message of hope, because I think today has very much been about hope, that everything is going to be okay, ultimately. Sister Jen, well, let's begin with you, Ingrid. What message of hope you would like to leave people with today?
Oh, yes. Thank you. I would just say that through my whole experience, and like we talk today through this conversation, I want to bring to you that I have realized that there is no death, there is only life, that we are eternal divine beings, and that we are never, ever alone. We're more powerful than we think we are, so we truly can be the change we want to see in the world. When we learn to calm our mind and align with source, that path becomes clear. And that's why meditation is so important. We have to create that space. And to end, the beings of light, couple of teachings that are very powerful. They said to me, do not be concerned with what others do, not because you don't care, but because you care so much that you fix yourself first. And they also said to me, Ingrid, I wanted to understand about purpose and mission. And they said, Ingrid, all of you, your purpose is to be the light, that light that you already are. And your mission is to shine it. So to end, I just say, let's together rediscover that light, shine it, and become that big flame able to illumine the world. Om Shanti.
I want to write those words down and put them on a card and stick it on my wall, because that was just beautiful. Thank you so much, Ingrid. Sister Jayanti, a final message of hope from you.
A little bit similar to what my dear sister Ingrid has shared. And I would just say, visualize the point of light that you are, and let yourself be aware of that. And it will shine, it will radiate peace, and stay connected with that source, that supreme divine being of light. and that light will always guide you in the right direction to a place of safety, a place of peace, and a place of love. So just two little things. Be the light and stay connected with the source of light and love.
That's another postcard going on my wall. Inspirations for every day. Sister Jayanti, Dr. Ingrid Honkala, from the heart, thank you both so much for your profound sharings and for your honest sharings. It's the deepest part of yourselves that you have shared with us today, and I think everyone watching will have been very deeply touched. Thank you so much to both of you, and thank you to all of you for being part, from wherever you are, being part of the energy that we've created today. Thank you for all your questions. We haven't by any means got around to all of them, partly because some of them were in Spanish and my Spanish isn't so good. But thank you anyway. And if you are left with a sense of wanting to know more about this, there is going to be a follow-up event next weekend, actually on Sunday the 19th of September, and it's called The Awakened Soul, Living Lightly, Serving Freely. And it's at 2:30 next Sunday. You can find out more by visiting www.lighthouseretreatcenter.org. So do join in next Sunday. But for today, from all of us here, from our hearts, thank you, goodbye, and Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.